I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and we are ramping up to the first real new comic book day since Diamond Comics, put out the memo. They were halting distribution starting 1 April. It's going to have been about, 6-7 weeks, about that time before we get the next, new comic book day. Diamond is back on the market. They were able to hit their date, and they're doing some stuff. They're making some moves. They got like a little comeback campaign going right now, and here to talk with me about that is my good friend from Fantastic Comics, Yul Carter, retailer himself.
Hi there. Back the comeback, everybody.
It's time to back the comeback.
That's right.
So, for a long time, you would never really hear from Diamond Comics head Steve Geppi, who owned the company, but he's been doing a lot of interviews on YouTube. He's been talking to Newsarama. It looks like he's done interviews with ICV2.com right now, really trying to get the word out that Diamond Comics is back, and they're trying to come back in a big way, and they have this new campaign, hashtag back the comeback. I think that's what it is. And there's even a little trademark on it because it's trademarked. So, that was my first thing where I oh, he trademarked it. That's not cool.
Sure did.
People don't like to get it. That's not a grassroots movement. It feels like you're trying to capitalize on it. And now, they got like a little a stamp that they want to put on covers so people will know that those are a pandemic era collectibles. What do you think? Is this going to work?
I think that little stamp reminds a lot of people of the Comics Code Authority. And the Comics Code Authority was created so that it was created by the comic book companies so that people would know that there was nothing bad on the inside. And
so the government wouldn't come in and regulate the industry.
Exactly. But the government wasn't doing that. So they capitulated before they even had to. And this feels like that right now also. It's like, hey, everybody, we're really hurting, but, we're going to come back and sell some comic books. So let's back that comeback, And I don't know if you're right. If trademarking that does sound kind of weird. And
hey, if you go Google search, there's T-shirts.
You comeback. And if there's already guys like Joe Field who created Free Comic Book Day or helped create that, he is already wearing a shirt that says back the comeback with that little coupon on it. And I'm sure there's going to be other influential comic shop owners that are already going to have it also. Obviously, I don't, since I'm here talking to you about it and not too into it. They're not sending those out to every store, at least. I know that. But
so what do you think? They want to put this stamp on covers to make them like manufactured collectibles. As a reader, as someone who buys physical comics, I hope they offer a cover without it, because I would rather have it the one without the stamp.
Well, if it's DC, you can get the alternate cover probably. So,
well, DC and Marvel haven't signed on yet, but the other smaller publishers have.
Yeah, if you recall when 9/11 occurred, afterwards a lot of them put the towers with an American flag and somewhere on the covers. This is another thing. This is kind of like a comic books version of 9/11. our little COVID.
Well, the economy's version, or I think every sector almost has been decimated.
Well, it has. I'm just saying that this is our new 9/11 stamp on the comic cover is this thing. I didn't know that DC and Marvel weren't on board, but yeah.
Well, it says Steve. In the interview, Steve said he hasn't approached them yet.
I see. Yeah, they probably will anyway. Unless they just really hate Diamond. Maybe DC does. I don't know.
Well, Diamond seems to not like DC, but we're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if this is going to work or care or if anybody's going to care about it. As far as the cover, if it's just a little stamp up in the corner, it's not going to be that big a deal. But it feels like I've heard people say circle jerk. I've said that kind of thing before also. It is a lot of glad handing and saying, hey, everything's good and everything's going to go back to normal, so you can too. And I don't believe that's necessarily the case. I don't know what normal is and how things are going to be going forward. And this definitely isn't something. I mean, this just gets me angry. I know. I mean, it gets me angry. I see it like Geppi has not been a person ever since we've only been in business like 9 years. And I've never seen Geppi once come out and talk until this recently. And he even has said in interviews that, oh, I've kind of been, asleep at the wheel, let other people deal with stuff, but now I'm enthused and interested, and I want to really get this thing going on again, and I'm going to take charge. But, this is a guy that wasn't doing that, obviously, all this time. And if this is what he's coming out with, if this is his new initiative to back the comeback, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed at all with it.
Well, neither am I, and I don't want people to think, well, Wes on Thinking Critical hates Steve Geppi. I don't know the man. I think his company, could have been more supportive of retailers and things like that. But I do not doubt his sincerity and his love for comic books. I know he funded his own museum. He has put out massive lines of credit to retailers to keep them in business, and he's done a lot of good things for the industry. But I don't see this being a big deal. As a reader, I'm not going to come back into a comic shop because of a hashtag or a stamp being on a cover because I want that to be collectible. You know what's going to get me back into a comic shop is a great kick-ass story from Scott Snyder, a kick-ass story from Chip Zdarsky, my favorite creators going out there on social media, maybe going out there and getting the word out about what stories they have coming up and letting me know why they're important and why I can't wait to get back into the store and why I need to do it the first weekend. And if it's not from the creators, if it's not from like the artists and stuff like that, I don't care. Like publishers aren't going to get me excited other than maybe Todd McFarlane. He's not really the publisher at Image, but he's an executive there. Like that's not how it's going to be. Steve Geppi can't get me into a comic shop. Jim Lee can't get me into a comic shop. CB Cebulski certainly can't. Philip Slayback, none of those guys can get me into a comic shop. Tom King maybe could if he put out a good book. Obviously Scott Snyder can, Chip Zdarsky, Jonathan Hickman, the great creators in the industry can get me back. It's not going to be executives talking about how great the books that they had nothing to do with being created. Nah, it's not going to do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not fully slamming Steve Geppi. I mean, obviously, if it wasn't for Diamond and it being in existence, we probably wouldn't have. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. You never know. There's always, something will, sprout up. You could cover the ground with cement and you still see weeds after a while. A flower will grow in Brooklyn.
Necessity is the mother of all innovation.
Exactly. But at the same time, so Geppi has had contracts with these companies back in, when they were trying to figure out who was going to, go with who back when the split happened with all the different distributors. And now that those, he signs people to contracts and they can't just go out and get distributed by just anybody. So he was a benign monopoly, but at the same time, he was signing people and not allowing them to go and get distributed by other places. So the things that I like that he's done, he kept the comic industry going. He does love comic books. You can tell. He had the museum, like you said, the Overstreet Guide, all that stuff. And, he's very influential, but he hasn't been a voice until recently for a long time. And that was like when I'm slamming him, it's just because I'm a retailer and I see all the things that I don't like, and backing the comeback just feels like it's going back to business as usual. It's not addressing the real things that I think that the industry needs. It's not addressing any of the practices of the different publishers. And you're right, it's the creators that get me into wanting to buy comic books. It's not anything that execs say. It's not executive talk. It's not a hashtag. It's not a coupon on a comic or a sticker, whatever. Yeah, it's just it's the creators that get you into it, and the characters, of course, also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so people will come back when there are great books that they're ready to read. And hopefully Dark Knights of Death Metal will be the first one. We already talked about, recently Joker War, and hopefully, 3 Jokers will be another one. And then 10 of Swords will come along and people will be ready to come back there, ready to put their money down. But this hashtag, like, back the comeback coupon shirt thing isn't going to do it for me. I'll be honest, if I saw Scott Snyder wearing that shirt, I would think less of him, because it's not grassroots. It's not something by comic fans. It feels corporate, and it feels like it was hatched up in a PR office or something like that.
Yeah, and with a trademark on it, it already sounds like if I use the hashtag, then it's one of those situations where, well, does anything that I put on with that hashtag get owned by them? Like how that May the
Star
4th
Wars
be with you thing happen, and stuff. And it's just, hashtags are stupid.
I hope some people like it, and I think hashtags are cool to create interest or movements, but I just don't think that you can create it without the actual fans for like a hashtag. I don't think creators can do it. I saw Jimmy Palmiotti try it, and it kind of failed miserably for him as well. But I hope if people are excited about this, good for them. And I hope they get their t-shirts, and maybe they'll get those covers with the pandemic era collectible, whatever. It feels, like fake collectibles to me. But there's more information on the Steve Geppi front. He finally talked about DC breaking their 25-year exclusive contract. When they renewed it, he said about a year and a half ago, they put in a clause that they could give 60 days notice if they wanted to terminate it. To not being exclusive and have other distributors. It was in there, and they exercised it. It feels like there's maybe some animosity between DC and a lot of the retailers and Diamond Comics, to be completely honest. Do you see that being founded, and are you happy with what DC did?
I think, look, DC had to do what they had to do. It's like comic stores opening when they're not supposed to and all that other stuff, in certain areas. You got to do what you got to do so that you can be, so you can stay alive. And they said they were going to look for alternate ways to get distributed. Everybody says that a single distribution network is not the way to go. And I think they're giving a lot of other companies out there maybe the impetus to actually do something similar. And I don't have a problem with it. Originally, I kind of was like, I didn't like the fact that they were actually getting distributed by a company and it wasn't at the same time as another company. So, like, let's say I didn't want to get on Lunar or whatever the other company is, and I wanted to wait for Diamond, and I'm a store, and then this other store down the street gets the Lunar stuff, and I don't, Diamond doesn't ship yet. There's a problem there. So that's the one aspect of what DC did I didn't appreciate. But getting set up and ready to go and do that kind of thing, aces on them. And if it pisses Diamond off, that's good, because, again, Geppi came out and said that he had been asleep at the wheel, basically, and that he has a renewed interest. And one of his renewed interests was probably because DC put their foot up his ass and said, we're going over here, too. And I hope Marvel does the same thing. If I can get a chance at another distributor and I can hold a little bit of power over who I choose, I think that's beneficial for me also.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it's up in the air whether or not this is temporary or not. Obviously, Steve Geppi in that interview said that he understood it. It sounded like it was supposed to be a temporary measure. But I'm kind of hoping that they end up distributing, some of the smaller publishers, because from what I hear, they're not treated all that well, and it's kind of hard to get a seat at the table at Diamond. But the last thing we have to talk about is another, change that DC kind of enacted with this distribution model is New Comic Book Tuesday, which they've now decided is permanent. If you have DC Comics on Tuesday, you can sell them, whereas everyone else, I guess, is still going to be Wednesday. Do you like this change? I think it's smart for DC to have first crack at customers. When Dark Knight's Death Metal comes out, people aren't going to want to wait till Wednesday to get their hands on that book. If they can, they're going to want to go get it on Tuesday. There's going to be the other DC titles there. Get some first crack at customers.
Yeah, I think it won't be long before we see Marvel and Image on Tuesdays also, if that's the way it is, because there's no way they're going to allow that to happen. It's fine. I don't have a problem. An extra day where people come in and want to buy books. Of course, there's people that are or stores, retailers that are saying that, well, if I have my Marvel comics, I might as well sell those to the DC people also if they want them. So there will be a little bit of impropriety going on in that regard. But, you know, so Marvel is probably going to switch over to Tuesday also. I can't imagine it not happening. And I don't care.
I think it sounded like in the interview, Steve Geppi was kind of underselling the importance or of whether it was actually going to make any changes. And I think he's underestimating just like DC's coming out guns blazing. Marvel isn't. People are going to be in the shops on Tuesday to get those books.
Yeah, they are. In the very least, there will be a lot of phone calls to stores on Tuesdays to hold material so that when people come in on Wednesday. So your store should probably open at least for the phones.
Well, if you get new pull box customers, that's good for retailers.
Yeah, and you know, there's often, so I have DC fans and Marvel fans, obviously, and then there's the people that go in between and get, you know, their Batman and their Spider-Man books and stuff like that. So it's not really that big a deal. It does feel like a little bit of an inconvenience that someone was going to have to go on one day and then another day to get both books. And sometimes it's difficult to get people in the store on a regular basis anyway, especially when you have a hold box. You know, you're like, oh, I can go in the next week, that type of thing. It does create a problem, though, if you are only able to go in that one Wednesday and, you know, those DC books maybe are sold out already.
Hey, the first appearance of Clown Hunter, you know that book is not going to last.
That's right. Got to order extras on that. Ooh, specs are out there.
Absolutely. The book will be $12 the first day.
That's right. So, you know, it's Tuesday is not a big deal as far as me personally working it or stocking the stuff or selling it to customers. I just would like to see the other companies probably, you know, publishers move on over also to a Tuesday. But
I don't think they'll have a choice because DC's got all the books that are coming out and no one else does. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, all the other companies have really scaled. I mean, I guess even DC to some degree has scaled down the books that they're putting out. It's just, if you only look at Batman, it seems like DC's still putting out the same amount of stuff as normal, maybe even more than normal. But you know, and Marvel, it doesn't have a whole lot of stuff, but when they start rolling and they get their big event going, if they're not out on the same day as a DC book, I'd really be surprised.
You and me both, brother. Hey, I really appreciate the time. If you enjoy the verbal styling of Yule Carter, he has his own YouTube channel called Fantastic Comics. There will be a link in the video description. He also likes to talk about the Squared Circle Wrestling on the Wrestling Council. There will be a link to that podcast as well in the video description if you want to hear him talk about the sport of professional wrestling.
Yeah, thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.